Good.
It's gonna be awesome. All right, so I'm gonna wait over here to see myself, my live video. Yep. Okay. Uh-oh. Where are we here? All right. Taking me a minute, but I think that we are actually live. So let's see. There
Yeah,
we
mine
are.
says
There we
live.
are. What?
I was gonna say mine says live. I don't know.
Okay, good. I'm just trying to find it so I can pull it up over here so I can see people's questions. And I don't know why I'm having trouble finding it. I have it on the one computer. I just need it on this computer so that I can see us, because seeing us is very important to me because then I see the people. There you are. Okay, good. There you are. I'm just trying to find it so I can pull it up over here so I can see. There we go. Awesome. Thank you for your patience. So, this week on So Ask Us, thank you everyone who's already hopped on and tuning in. My mom's on. That's a good thing. Hi, Mom. She's dedicated. I love it. And I know she's going to ask some questions, and they're always good questions. So, this week on So Ask Us, we are revisiting with Ben Sussman, who is the outreach specialist for Rise Dispensaries in Amherst, which is connected to Green Thumb Industries. Really fantastic company. And we are talking about a very specific topic today, which is, wait, let's see. There we go. There we go. This building right here, which is just off of Route 116. I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with their store. And Rise has decided, and Ben kind of spearheaded this, which I'm pumped about because creative placemaking and art, I get really excited. He spearheaded pursuing a mural to go on the building. And we just got submissions from the artists, and they are now being decided on. And I'm going to turn it over to Ben in a second to talk more about the process of deciding which mural is going to be selected. But I want to start by hearing a little bit from you, Ben, about why you even pursued this in the first place.
Yeah, totally. Honestly, it's been a very long process. It's been like a months long process to like actually get this to the point where now we have artist submissions and it's actually
Yeah.
happening. It's been approved by the town, and GTI, decided to move forward with it. There's a whole internal process of approvals. So it's hard to actually look back at what my mindset was when I originally,
Right.
thought this was a good idea. I feel like for me, it came from like a very personal place of just like, looking at the cannabis industry and the cannabis community and the alignment with art, and the love of art. I mean, it's clear, it's like, I think a lot of artists use cannabis in their creative process. It's a plant that opens the mind, and, art can, there's a lot of interplay of those things. And art has the, ability to kind of open people's minds and, change people's perspectives and, change an environment and all that stuff. So, I mean, for me, I've just always loved mural art, graffiti, lived in Chicago for a long time. So, some neighborhoods to walk through would be when you walk through and you see a big building with a huge mural on it. And there's tons of like famous muralists that live and work in Chicago and are putting stuff up on buildings all over the place. So for me, it's just something like aesthetically that I always loved. I love tattoo art. So it's just something that's like personal for me. So it just seemed like a natural thing, looking at our building early on when I first started with GTI, just being like, hey, it would be amazing if, we utilize some of this big brick wall that's 10 feet tall and, however many feet long, and put something up that would be, have the ability to kind of change the space and be recognizable and just impact people and with the having some beautiful art up. So I mean, for me, it just came from that place of just thinking like literally like how cool would that be if we did that, not having any real expectation that it would be possible. So as I started bringing this idea up, just kind of where we're positioned in the market and where where we're located, trying to find a way to make it more recognizable. I think anyone who's been to our location knows that, you know, it definitely has that kind of drive-by effect where if you didn't know where we were, you'd kind of be like, hey, what's that?
Yeah.
See the sign. You know, it doesn't have a lot of impact when you're driving by it. You know, I think some dispensaries are kind of have that effect. You know, it's like a lot of communities, you know, have, you know, put dispensaries strategically in different places, maybe a little bit off the beaten path. You know, there's a lot of like zoning regulations of where a dispensary can be located. So, you know, just trying to find a way to make us recognizable. So that's where it started. You know, where it's at now is obviously we're at a very different place. This is actually happening now, which is unreal. But yeah, I mean, it just came from that place of just, you know, wanting to have something really awesome up on the walls pretty much. So.
Right. And it is happening. It's happening fast. What is the timeline?
So if everything goes according to plan, the mural should be installed by early November, depending on how long the artist. Yeah, so really quick. So, you know, we're about a month out from the installation starting. I think we've looked at like basically like a 7-day window, allowing for some fluctuation depending on, you know, obviously some artists work faster than others.
Right.
Some styles take longer than others. So yeah, the installation's gonna be, you know, it's full steam ahead. So hopefully before snowfall, you know, we have some leaves are falling, as the leaves are falling and the landscape is losing color, we're gonna be throwing up a really colorful, kind of cool stuff.
That's so fantastic. And you mentioned the market, and I think that is a point not to be avoided. And I'm sure there are people talking about it in Amherst, but I know that your process with your company did involve some talking about what place does art have in business, in marketing, in setting Rise apart.
Yeah.
What can you share with us about some of those internal conversations and kind of where that very organic thought of like, oh, it would be so nice to beautify this building with some art. But then you obviously get into the spectrum of talking about, well, why and what's the point and how does that connect to the actual business side of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, totally. I think like it's so complicated once you start getting into doing art like this. You know, I think like I, you know, sort of indicated, it's like from where I started mindset wise to where we're at now. Once you start getting other opinions and people, you know, art is so subjective and what people kind of envision, you know, having it align with a brand, you know, obviously cannabis industry, you have the additional impact of regulation. So there's certain things that we can't put on the building, you know, not being able to have words so that it's not, you know, quote unquote a sign, and just trying to, you know, come up with the idea of, all right, if we're going to move forward with this and seek out artists to do a mural like this, well, what is it that we're looking to convey? What is the, you know, what are we trying to get across with the art? So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ideas that kind of came flooding in. You know, our marketing department got involved. Obviously, you know, when you're in a large organization, you know, there's lots of people that do this all day long. This is what they do, is trying to you know, brand and trying to express what it is that, you know, we're trying to express as an organization in terms of, you know, bringing wellness to people's lives and cannabis having a positive impact on people's lives. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult. Where does that align with art? And this is the first time that we're doing this. You know, we're the first dispensary in the Rise, you know, large growing number of dispensaries that we have around the country that's going to have an installation like this, which is really.
Do you think this is going to ripple out and happen at other locations?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. That's the idea. So that's the intent, is to really have like an arts program at Rise where you know, places, you know, dispensaries where it makes sense. You know, we utilize some of the spaces, you know, whether indoors or outdoors, you know, but yeah, trying to see what the impact of this can be. You know, and I think, you know, there's some places where it makes sense, some places where it doesn't, but yeah, definitely, you know, something that we're going to look to build upon. But yeah, so I don't know where I was going with that, but it's definitely one of those things that once you start to, you know, once you start to get into the nitty gritty of it and what the art is really gonna, what the meaning behind the art is gonna be once it's actually up on the wall, you know, becomes more of a discussion. So
what felt important to you and to your marketing department to get across? You mentioned, I know that the slogan for Rise is your right to wellness. So that, and what else felt important to say with this piece?
I think really having something that connected with Amherst, Massachusetts, New England, the people, the landscape, the history, that was the primary, you know, the artist brief that we came up with. So really just
Yeah.
kind of connecting to that and trying to have, a mural that conveyed, what Amherst is all about, the
Mhm.
culture, the culture. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I grew up in New England, and I think sometimes when you grow up in an area, you always stop to think like, well, what is like
What
Western Mass?
are we about?
Yeah, like what are we all about? So it was kind of cool for me to see that process of ideas coming in, and obviously there's a lot of luminaries and people from this area, names that came up and influences historically. So really, just compiling a list of these things, the animals from the area, the environment, and just pulling those ideas and trying to get artists' creative juice flowing. Um,
Yeah.
get see how they interpret that.
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
think the interesting thing too is it's then you get to that point, like, and we were just so then once you start to get the submissions, you're like, well, how does this connect to the original
Right. You
brief?
take a deep
So
dive.
that's like the cool thing about art, and I think I'm coming to this very inexperienced. This is my first time doing anything like this. So it's really been exciting and been an honor, and getting to work with people who do this all the time. It's been eye opening.
Yeah.
So, and obviously I think art is something that, people are very opinionated about and passionate about. So it's been cool to see that kind of play out. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I definitely feel you on, that piece of opinions and that piece of pulling the community in the Mill District. I'm sure anyone who's following what we're doing, we've been putting a lot of public art up, especially in COVID, because it's something that people can appreciate, walk by. We are not doing it in the same vein that you are, which it's not right on a business. So that element is different for us. But at the same time, the opinions are still there, and the content and the quality is really important. One thing that we put a lot of emphasis on in the Mill District is lifting up local artists and local voices and tying into Cole's history. What was some of the decision making around local artists, not local artists? I know submissions ended up coming from artists who are not local. Um, what was some of the thought around the avenue to go in and seeking submissions for the work?
yeah, I think like part of it comes from, when you're in a large organization, like, we have dispensaries that are located all over the country. So like, this is Rise Amherst, so you obviously have, you know, sort of someone like myself who's wading into these waters, not with a lot of experience, not with a lot of contacts in the local art community. So, trying to find a muralist locally initially was a little bit difficult. We got, some names from a few Massachusetts artists, which actually were, part of the submission process. So we did have some local artists, but ultimately we decided to go with a curator and an organization that does this type of thing all the time and gave us a little broader access to muralists that are kind of working at the level that we're looking for, and we're able to just kind of step in and be like, yeah, I can do this, and this is what it'll look like, and pass that brief along. So I think just kind of like as it accelerated, honestly, it just kind of came down to timeline and budget and trying to figure out, how to tap into, a certain number of artists as quickly as possible. It's kind of the way that I felt about it. And, again, like, someone like me, just not having contacts in the artist community, it's not as easy to find like muralists as you might think, at least, for me. So
Yeah.
where it went. And then really what we tried to do is just get the largest, most diverse pool of artists as we could. And
Yeah.
and then kind of real life things kind of come into play, like scheduling and budget, and is the artist available, is this something
Right.
they're
Because you guys on
interested
a
in?
great timeline.
Yeah, even being able to get in contact with some of these artists and just be like, hey, here's this creative brief, is this something that you're interested in? So then the pool kind of starts at a point where you feel comfortable with like, hey, this is a great group of artists, and then it kind of naturally whittles down to what it becomes, and a lot of factors are kind of out of our control. you know, a number of the local artists that we did have, you know, were asked to submit and ultimately did not, which, you know, again, there's just a lot of real life things. This is a particularly difficult time to be doing something like this. You know, a lot of people have a lot going on, you know,
Yeah.
much more difficult, you know, than it was, you know, a year and a half ago. So, you know, getting someone to Massachusetts and having them do a mural installation just in 2020.
Not easy.
So, yeah, I mean, the process just kind of, like many things, just kind of, you know, went in the direction that it went in.
Right.
Really, I think it's been really great, and we ended up with a really nice group of submissions. So, yeah,
Nice.
you know.
So for anybody who's watching, please feel free to ask questions. If you're not sure how to do that, you can go to where it says comment, put your question in the comment, and I will relay it to Ben and he can answer it in real time. I know that there are a lot of opinions out there, but it's always interesting when time for questions comes, we don't hear a lot of them. So I'm hoping that folks will hop on and ask questions and things that they're wondering about.
Let's do it.
Good opportunity to
Should
do
we
it.
put my cell phone number on the screen? People can text.
I can if you want me to, man. You'll be fielding things for so long. But I mean, you know, jokes aside, I think that this is one of the things that I love about art, about public art specifically, is the generation of conversation and opinions. You know, I know after you guys went in front of, I think it was the design board or was it the ZBA?
Yeah, the ZBA.
Yeah. So after that, there was a, you know, article in Amherst Indian, article in the Gazette, articles all over the place about the process. And I get excited about that because public art, I think, should and does plug into how people feel about the place that they live, and not just, you know, feel about it like they like it or they don't, but feel about it as in what you're saying about impact. Art impacts the environment that we're all in and what we're interacting with. And so it was interesting to see people's responses and people's opinions. And there were people that were very outspoken with their concerns before even seeing the work, which I think is an important thing to note. Always. My part of my professional background was in Philadelphia for quite some time. You were talking about Chicago. Philadelphia is known for its murals, the mural arts program that started in the 70s as an anti-graffiti effort, which I think is a little misleading because anti-graffiti sounds like it was trying to sort of take away a culture of creativity and outspokenness, when in reality, I think anyone who's interacted with the mural arts program in Philadelphia knows that Jane Golden's drive was to really channel that art and that creativity and that outspokenness and that politicism and everything that graffiti is underlied with. She really wanted to help channel that into actually larger works that said more and said more clearly. And, you know, now Philadelphia has the largest collection of public art in the country, not just murals, but sculptures. And the murals actually drew more public art to the area, more artists who wanted space to install their work and their voice, which I think is phenomenal. I think I'm going to get this so wrong, but I think Philadelphia has over 350 murals in Philadelphia proper. And, you know, the presence of murals and the presence of art does so much. I mean, Mural Arts has done an amazing job of studying the impact, qualifying and quantifying the impact that it has on people's sense of safety, their sense of community, their sense of reclaiming a space from some of the more negative feelings of, you know, a neighborhood where there's not a lot of gathering or not a lot of nightlife. The installation of a mural can do a lot for the psyche, collective psyche of people and the individual psyche. So without going too far down this road, because I can definitely go down it for ages, the opinions are part of that, right? The way people feel is a part of that. So can you tell us a little bit about the jury process, because this mural is not just being selected by you. I think you had 7 artists who ended up submitting work. A few of them actually submitted 2 options. So there are quite a few designs to choose from. Who's choosing what is going to end up on this building?
Totally. Yeah. So we have, you know, in like going into the process, like we really like outside of like the concept of the art, like there's a lot of discussions about how to do this in a way that's fair, you know, how to be thoughtful about the process, how to include people from Amherst, you know, obviously going to the zoning board and, you know, laying out our intentions for the project and, you know, what the plan is, you know, and really just going about it in like the most professional way possible, you know, as a company to be like, hey, you know, we're gonna be putting up this mural, but, you know, I think like you were kind of saying, like, I think sometimes when you talk about murals and the idea of graffiti, you know, there's sort of like a intersection there where people's expectations are like, you know, what is it that's going to be going up on the wall?
Right.
You know, so just trying to like make sure that like we're putting as much into it as we can to make sure that we end up with like a really great piece of art, you know, that people are going to be looking at. So, but yeah, I mean, for the process, you know, we have 3 people from Amherst. They're going to be on the jury selection committee, whatever, I don't know what it's called.
Jury.
So yeah,
myself included, I should say. I didn't say that at the start of this, and I should have for disclosure for anybody watching. I am part of this jury. Keep going.
Yeah, so you got to vote, you know, and like everybody that works at Rise Amherst is getting a vote.
Nice.
You know, so that's really cool. You know, just for the people that work here, you know, we have some people that have been here for a really long time. Some, you know, like any retail business, some people that come and go, but it's cool for the people that work here to be here at this moment in this process. And then, yeah, just a number of people from our organization. So, you know, our president of retail, our president of marketing, you know, have really been influential to getting GTI and Rise to where it is today. You know, having a say in, you know, ultimately what this is going to look like and what piece of art is going to go up on the building. So, yeah, trying to get a lot of opinions, you know, trying to have, you know, not have it just be like one voice that's picking this piece of art, but have, you know, a group of people that have been selected, you know, to look at the submissions and, you know, have a choice that's representative of everybody. So.
Nice. So I have a question from Virginia, who's been watching the whole time, which is awesome. She says, this mural can really say, we want to connect to the community. Are there other ways that Rise aspires to weave itself into the Amherst community? And could you talk specifically about Rise's organization, just to acquaint people who might not be familiar with you guys?
Yeah, totally. So Rise, I guess I'll start with the organization. So Rise is the dispensary branch of Green Thumb Industries, which is a multi-state operator, a cannabis company based out of Chicago. That's where our home office is. But yeah, we're, you know, opening up cultivation facilities and retail facilities and medical and recreational cannabis markets across the country at this point. So California, Nevada, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Massachusetts. So the cannabis industry is exploding. You know, I think everybody knows that, you know, we're at a point in this country where there's a lot of important issues around that explosion, you know, including equity and restorative justice. And, you know, that's really where kind of to parlay into the second part of the question about how we, you know, other ways that we try to connect with the community. You know, first and foremost, I think that those would be, is the, you know, for me as the outreach specialist, those are the primary channels that I want to connect, is first tackling those big issues. So for example, this month we are sponsoring with National Expungement Week of Western Massachusetts. I set up a sponsorship with their expungement clinic that they're doing with Western New England University Law School, where they're offering pro bono legal services and helping people expunge their records and getting their records sealed and just providing people with legal services around, you know, cannabis charges and low-level offenses. You you know, a lot of people don't have the resources to even understand that there's something that they can do about those things.
Right.
Western New England University, I always want to say Winnick because I'm from Western Mass, but it's Western New England University now. And law school is going to be actually doing this work pro bono into the future. So they're going to be offering these services like from here on out in coordination with National Expungement Week and hopefully Rise as well. So we're sponsoring this one event, but we're looking at other ways that we can get involved. So
nice. And for anyone who might not be clear, I just want to toss in there too that expunging your record and sealing those records can help you get a job. It can help you get a home. You know, as this conversation about legalization of marijuana continues, Rise focusing on people who have been very negatively impacted by the laws around marijuana. You know, there is a feeling that there's some deserving of being able to move forward from that. So
yeah, and like, you know, we're very aware, like as individuals and as an organization, like, you know, we have a dispensary in Amherst and all over the country where people can walk in as medical patients and customers and buy cannabis. And then also in our society, you have people that are incarcerated for cannabis, people who have, you know, things on their record that are impacting their lives. You know, a lot of people don't know. And like, it goes without saying, like, you know, these effects have disproportionately affected poor communities, Black and brown communities. So it's just the cannabis industry has to be a leader and work with organizations that are a leader. Like Last Prisoner Project, we had a month-long promotion going with them during the month of September, where a portion of our proceeds nationally went to help Last Prisoner Project. So, you know, I know this is just to kind of bring it back, you know, that affects Amherst too, and people living in our local communities and trying to help people become educated about issues such as that. You know, other things I do as outreach specialist would be you know, and obviously during COVID, it's different. A lot of this stuff is virtual, but doing cannabis education, you know, for people that are interested that maybe don't know a lot about cannabis, but are looking to, for example, you know, find relief for insomnia or anxiety or depression. And they've heard from someone that, you know, cannabis may be something they should look into, but they haven't used cannabis, or they're just really looking for basic information about pain. So I just, with an organization called LeafWell, I just did a webinar last week where, you know, and our Instagram and Facebook pages are great places to find when we're doing these type of things. And we're starting to pick it up a little bit more now that we're, you know, I guess sort of at a different stage in the pandemic. We're thinking up a little bit more. But yeah, you know, just trying to, you know, help educate people around cannabis. So we did a webinar about cannabis and pain. Yeah, just in the past, you know, supporting local organizations, you know, trying to find local organizations that we can partner with. We just put together a volunteer committee, which is going to be sort of like on our hourly employee level. So they're going to be organizing together. We're putting together a committee where they can find local efforts that they can get involved in and, you know, work around their schedules. So yeah, there's a number of ways. I'm sure I could go on and think of more things, but yeah, I mean, you know, I think not only Rise and GTI, but the cannabis industry as a whole, I think a lot of organizations are making a real effort to, you know, get involved in the local communities, work with, you know, local, state, national organizations to bring about real change. You know, I think that also just shows, you know, the intention of the people that work in the cannabis industry, why they got into this industry. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Question, but, you know.
No, that was, I think that's awesome. And bringing that element into it of, you know, what leadership could look like. I mean, we are experiencing the rise of a brand new industry, which I think, I mean, I'm going to make a super uneducated statement that I'm sure a million students at Eisenberg are going to be like, that's not true. But I feel like not since the rise of tech and like the .com boom have we experienced a completely new industry, completely new frontier of, you know, legal questions and all the different ways that people might have been negatively impacted by something, and then the turning of that tide. Other than prohibition, we haven't really experienced that. So for leaders in your industry to take that responsibility on, there's not a ton of precedent for that. So you guys are really, you know, I know when you and I first started talking about this public art piece,
Yeah.
But it just, there wasn't a lot of examples to go on. And it was like, well, you know, how does this interact with marketing marijuana specifically? And what is the relationship between art and artist and marijuana? And like,
Yeah.
you know, how do we talk about that and how do we lead? And then getting into questions of incarceration and social justice, it's like, I mean, I have to give you guys major props, and I'm sure there are other cannabis companies out there. It's just that yours is the one I'm most familiar with, because you're local to Amherst and to the Mill District. But that sense of responsibility is something that we don't see in a lot of industries that have also harmed people in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
I think it starts top down. Like, honestly, like our CEO, Ben Kovler, talks about cannabis as like Prohibition 2.0, and he is, you know, very in touch with the issues in our industry. And like, you know, it's like we're in an industry right now that is, you know, it's like our society has to come to terms and make a decision. Like, you know, people that are in prison for cannabis crimes need to be let out of prison. You know, it's like you can't live in a society where people are locked up for low-level cannabis offenses, and then you have other people that are making millions of dollars on it, and you know, making a career out of it. So, you know, that obviously needs to change, and I think there's a lot of people pushing to change that, and you know, and that's just, you know, one of the many issues, and I think that it's definitely inspiring to see, and like, of course, like there's always room to do better, and room to grow. I think the industry is doing a good job just trying to work with communities, like I said, local, state, even national, to find ways that we can make an impact. And it's crazy, you know, it's like the industry is growing so quickly that it's like you have retail industries that are booming. There's, you know, even me in my role, it's like I'm constantly learning. You know, I came to this with a culinary background and just trying to apply like my work ethic that I learned working in fine dining kitchens to like a completely new role, and just ways to connect and make a difference. It's definitely not easy, you know, and especially COVID threw us a big curveball. Just being able to be out in the community and do what we do, you know, work with people, educate people, connect, you know, so just trying to find ways to pick that back up. So
yeah, absolutely. So Virginia posted another question, and it actually goes into a question I was about to ask you as well. So I'm gonna try to ask you both, and I can repeat any part of it. But she says she's not 100% sure how to ask this, but with cannabis businesses opening in the Valley, so many cannabis businesses, how can everyone succeed? Kind of how much room is there really in the market? And do you each try to have unique businesses? And I think that kind of goes into a question I was going to ask about your customer base. And when you're thinking about, you know, this mural, or you're thinking about the work that you do around, you know, expungement and the Last Prisoner Project, how do you guys set yourselves apart? What is the importance of setting yourselves apart to you? And how does this artwork kind of factor into that? Because you've got to be thinking, you know, about who's driving in and driving by as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there are so many cannabis dispensaries opening up and cultivation facilities, and there's going to be new licenses that the state approves, you know, whether that be delivery licenses or, you know, eventually we're probably going to be looking at like adult use locations, you know, cafes and that type of thing. So there's going to be, you know, an industry of, you know, lots of different types of licenses. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be competition just like any industry, you know, and I think that there's small players and bigger players. And it's, I guess, you know, it's like any industry where, you know, people are going to have to find ways to make their businesses stand out. You know, if you've got a smaller adult use retail shop that's just wholesaling product and you don't have your own cultivation, that's, you know, a very different business model. You know, you have other companies like you could look at Netta that's like completely vertically integrated where they're only selling Netta products. So there's lots of different ways that this is being done. I mean, in terms of like how much room there is in the market, I don't think anybody knows that. You know, obviously it's kind of like Colorado goes recreational. I think that's the only cannabis market that I know of where people really predicted it, where I think Massachusetts was kind of like over predicted how big the market is. And, you know, you know, how do you make these predictions? But yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like setting yourself apart, I think the mural definitely plays into that. And, you know, I'm kind of proud to be a driving force of that, because I think that
Yeah.
in the cannabis industry, just like any industry, it's kind of easy to get in line with like the model. And like, I mean, you know, not even to downplay like, or, you know, talk down about any like cannabis businesses, but it's like you have a lot of businesses that are opening, same thing. It's like you walk in, it looks kind of like an Apple store. There's like wood grain and flat screen TVs and iPads and you know, all the nice cannabis packaging. And like that's cool, and like I like that aesthetic too, but I think that eventually like you know, companies are going to have to think outside the box of like creating, you know, brands and identities and environments that are a little bit different. And
Mhm.
not saying that a mural accomplishes all of that, but I think, you know, just trying to think of ways that you can create a space that's unique,
Yeah.
like a challenge. So yeah, you know, I think that's one place to start. So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
with this artwork in particular, how do you, as you're looking at the submissions that have come in, what sort of starts to go through your mind thinking about, you know, who your customers are? One of the things that I think is so interesting about the cannabis industry, and I will say this very carefully, is that, you know, there's a very broad culture and spectrum of uh, cannabis consumers, right? I mean, there are people who are, you know, in their 60s, 70s, 80s. There are people who have come to it purely recreationally. As you said, there are people who have come to it for some sort of mitigation of challenges, whether it's stress or sleep, you know,
Yeah.
then it's full on medical cancer treatment. You can go really deep with that.
Yeah.
But the age spectrum that this artwork is trying to appeal to, like any artwork
Mhm.
or design of any store, has got to be on your mind. So, what are some things as
Yeah.
you get these pieces of art? Where does your brain start to go about, like, oh, I bet this will appeal to this crowd, but not this one? And how do we
Yeah.
fit that together?
I think like for me, like that kind of makes me think about how like when I first started in the cannabis industry, I was pleasantly surprised at the spectrum of people
Hmm.
who buy cannabis. And I
Yeah.
think your expectation of like who your customer is going to be is constantly challenged. So I feel like art in a sense is like art is so subjective, but I feel like outside of the artist brief where there was like certain things that we didn't want to have, like we didn't want to be a political statement, you know, we didn't want to have like too much cannabis imagery, you know, partially because we can't, but also just because like that's not what we wanted it to be about.
Right.
But I think like
Not a Sublime album.
yeah, you know, like looking at how surprising it is, like the spectrum of people that come in, like I feel like you can't really predict like what people's taste is going to be with art, you know. So like
Mhm.
put up something that's going to be beautiful and colorful and eye-catching and well done, you know, is like kind of like the goal. And then like obviously having the artist brief where this is going to like connect to the community and hopefully offer some inspiration. But you know, it's like you're not like not everyone's going to love it obviously, but also like not trying to overthink it where it's like,
Hmm.
oh, like what people like, you know, what their particular taste is, and trying to like dive too deep into like what that will be. I just feel like is like for me, I was like, there's no way to do that, you know. So like,
Yeah.
why even go down that road? But I think just knowing the people in Western Mass and this definitely being an area where I think people really love and appreciate art, you know,
Definitely.
I think people are gonna love it. You know, whether or not it's some people are gonna be like, wow, this is my, you know, favorite mural. I just love this so much. And some people are gonna be like, not for me, you know, but that's I think that that's cool. I think that um to me that beats the hell out of just having like a beige wall.
Oh gosh, yes.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's like I guess everybody can look at a beige wall and be like, yeah, perfect. It's cool. You know, it's like you know, taking the risk of, you know, having a variety of opinions is worth it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great point. I appreciate
yeah.
how you answered that
Yeah.
question. That's a tough
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tough question, and there are always going to be opinions. I know when I read the article, I believe it was in the Gazette, following the meeting that you all had with the town, and just hearing some of even the preemptive opinions that were
Right.
forming. And I agree. I think the only way to really navigate that is just to stay true to what you guys are trying to do with this
Yeah.
piece of art. And also, I just want to like super emphasize the point you just made, because I think it's wonderful. It's a piece of art, right? You guys are investing in a piece of art.
Yeah.
Just like you would put on the wall of your home or the wall of wherever, you know, it's meant for people to have different reactions to it, and it's meant for people to feel a certain way about it. And I definitely felt in reading the creative brief, which I believe if anyone out there, I don't know if you've made it completely public, but I believe if anyone is interested, they can go to the ZBA meeting notes and
Yeah.
see it. But I felt like the creative brief was very well written as far as what you guys were looking for in that piece of art and what you were looking to lift up about your surroundings and your community.
Yeah.
So, like you went the distance of
Yeah.
trying to get it into that sort of nexus of local commentary and upliftment, and also just letting it be art.
Yeah.
It be
Yeah. 100%.
expressive.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to kind of commit to, I think that's also where part of the process of, looking for the muralists, and like, I can't speak like in an educated sense on like, and, I think art is art ultimately, but trying to find like a certain level of artist who, I guess the best way to put it would be like, has a lot of experience, like a lot of work that they've done in the mural space. It's like there's so many artists out there that work with different mediums and different things like that, who may be more local, and I'm sure they could accomplish a mural. But going into it with the budget that we had, and like when you're putting up money, like you said, to purchase a piece of art, you also want to have that confidence of like, okay, this person has done a lot of murals. So
Yes.
be able to look at the space, kind of take the brief and like come up with something that's that they can accomplish, and kind of to the wall, what they presented in the submission. So
Right. 'Cause it is a huge space also. Not everyone knows how to scale their work necessarily. So just because someone's a visual artist doesn't necessarily mean that that translates into mural art. They are not the same thing.
totally, yeah, and just like knowing how to prep the wall and like all these things that we've heard about, going into it, and
Yeah.
coating the wall so that like the art lasts, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like all these things that muralists who've done this, like they know how to do and navigate, around, different materials that are on the building.
Right.
Brick, we've got some siding and stuff like that. So, you
Right.
definitely has that experience to be able to accomplish it at the level that you want it to be done. So that like, for example, you don't go into it, get halfway through the mural and you're like, wow, this is not looking as good as it looked on paper. You know what I mean? I think having muralists that have done it many, many times helps kind of mitigate that type of risk. So
Definitely. Definitely. So we're getting close to time, and I'll put it out there. If anyone watching wants to put one more question up there, please feel free. This is your chance. Ben's willing to answer anything. And I and I have one last question, which is, I think more of like an idealistic question and a matter of opinion on your part. But do you see this mural as potentially kicking off more artwork, public artwork, support of the arts that Rise is trying to do, either on your land and in your space or in the community in general?
totally, yeah. I mean, I think that this to me is kind of like the starting point of hopefully something that's going to like grow into different areas, and I don't even really know where that's going to go, but hopefully having Rise get involved in other art initiatives, whether that be us supporting them, whether else that's on our property would be cool. But yeah, I mean, definitely like trying to like and kind of grow that connection of cannabis to the arts world, and build some of those relationships and find other ways that we can be involved is definitely the goal. For me, like another thing that I was just thinking about, like when you think about like public art, again, I have no background in public art, so but it's like for me, it's like you go see a sculpture that's in a particular place in a city or an area or a mural, and it's like it sort of becomes part of that landscape where like it might not be your favorite piece of art the first time you see it, but it comes to be something that you recognize and kind of becomes part of like your everyday landscape. So it sort of like takes on a life of its own. So it's like, for me, when I look at like Rise Amherst and us putting up a mural in this building, and like right now we're in that selection process where you're really kind of like, like looking at all the murals. I kind of last night was looking at all of them, and I was like, you know what? No matter which one of these artists gets selected and which one of these murals gets put up, ultimately it's going to be something really cool, because it's going to take on kind of an iconic, identifiable space where it's like, that's Rise Amherst, rather than it just being a building. So that's kind of like my hope for it, and I think that ultimately that's where it's going to like pay off in the long term. Like short term is where like the decisions are made and there's going to be a lot of judgment on it and all that, but it's like long term, since this art is going to live on the building forever, it's going to have that effect of being, oh, that's like this, it takes on a life of its own. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ben, I really appreciate you coming back on today. I don't know if you were nervous. You didn't seem nervous. And I'll definitely say, like you mentioned a couple times, this is not my sector, this is not my background, but I hear you talking about art and what it can do and the appreciation of it in ways that I talked about it with people in grad school for whom this is our background.
Cool, yeah,
so
awesome.
I think there's really a natural gravitation towards art as something that stirs conversation, brings people together. And I really appreciate everything you guys are doing, not only with art, but with everything you talked about today to be a part of the community, both locally and nationally.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And like, I mean, I'm here, I'm always down to talk to anybody. So if anybody, out there listening, like has anything that they like to work with Rise Amherst on, or myself, or any community initiatives or organizations, like, I get emails and phone calls all day long. And that's really what I do, is trying to find, people and organizations that we kind of align with. So
yeah,
I'm always here. You can call the dispensary and get my contact. So yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time and for everything you do. And I look forward to telling you my top choices for this piece of artwork.
All right. Can't wait to see it. All right.
Awesome. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody. Bye.